There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another book haul. Woohoo! I have a bunch. Let's get started. First is a memoir by Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Wrestling with the Devil. I love him and his writing, what I've read of it so far. Books by Lenus talked about his life in a review video she did. One of the best book reviews I've ever seen on BookTube. I'll put a link in the show notes. And talked about his time in prison. Stuff that I didn't know, and it made me want to seek this out. So I have it now. He was in prison in Kenya for about a year in 1978. Opening paragraph. It is past midnight, December 12th, 1978. Unable to face the prickly bristles of 3 see-through blankets on a mattress whose sisal stuffing has folded into numerous lumps, hard as stones. I am at the desk, under the full electric glare of a 100-watt naked bulb, scribbling words on toilet paper. I can hear the bootsteps of the night guard going up and down the passageway between the 2 rows of cells, which face each other. And this one was on the long list for the Man Booker International Prize this year, The Pine Islands by Marion Poshman. Heard very mixed reviews of it. It's at least partially set in Japan, which piqued my interest, and I want to give it a try. The protagonist, where is he? I think he might be in Germany, I'm not sure. Gilbert Sylvester doesn't necessarily sound very German, but he has a dream that his wife is cheating on him, so he leaves her and goes to Japan. He sounds like a complete idiot, but the opening sentence, he dreamt that his wife had been cheating on him. So, yeah. I'll let you know later. Miriam Toews is one of my favorite writers. She's Canadian, and I loved her second last novel, All My Puny Sorrows, and her most recent novel, Women Talking, is one of my all-time favorite reads. And so I want to read absolutely everything else this woman has written. I believe it was Eric that hauled this, and I found I could get the same edition very cheap from Amazon here in Japan. A Boy of Good Breeding. It's about a Canadian man in a rinky-dink town who believes he's the biological son of the Canadian Prime Minister. Now that may be based... When was this written? It's published in 1998, so maybe it's not based on the... About 5 years ago, so no, long after this Life Imitates Art, there was a man who came forward and looked remarkably like one of Canada's prime ministers in the 1960s. The only prime minister ever to come from my home province of Saskatchewan, John Diefenbaker. I'll put his picture up here, and here's the guy that claimed that he was John Diefenbaker's illegitimate son. His mother had been the Diefenbaker's secretary or something like that. I don't know if it was ever proven. I can't remember how it turned out because, you know, Canadian scandal stories are still pretty effing boring. But anyway, that's all I know about this. Let's see. What's the opening like? Algren was Canada's smallest town. It really was. Canada's smallest town. It said so on a big old billboard right outside the town limits. And Newt had checked with one of those government offices in the Blue Pages, and they said 1,500 is what you need for a town. And that's what Algren had. If it had one less, it would be a village, and if it had just one more, it would be a bigger town, like all the rest of the small towns. Being the smallest was its claim to fame. Well, I grew up near the village of Plenty, Saskatchewan, population 150, so Algren would have been a virtual metropolis in my childhood eyes. This was a Blame It on Mel and then Blame It on Britta combo. The Australian novel The Strays by Emily Bitto. It had been on my radar years ago, had fallen off, and then Mel loved it, and then Britta loved it. I think I ordered it in between those two lovely ladies reviewing it on their channel. And then Natalie of My Reading Days bailed or hated it anyway, so I don't know what I'll think of it. It's set in 1930s Australia. It's Lily's first day at a new school, and she befriends the daughter of an infamous painter. An infamous painter, oh my. Oh, I like the opening paragraph. I once read that the heart's magnetic field radiates up to 5 meters from the body, so that whenever we are within this range of another person, our hearts are interacting. The body's silent communications with other bodies are unmapped and mysterious. A linguistics of scent, color, flushes of heat, the dilating of a pupil. Who knows? What we call instant attraction may be as random as the momentary synchrony of two hearts' magnetic pulses. And this is a blame it on Charlotte if tired mama tries to read. I read another book by Emer Humphreys. I bailed on it around Christmas time. A Toy Epic, 1958. I couldn't get along with it. It started out pretty good, but it lost me. But Charlotte pleaded with me. She didn't plead with me, but you know how I like to dramatize everything. But she said, please try this one, The Best of Friends. And this one was published in 1978, set in 1920s Wales. And it's about two young people. I don't know if they're they're two young women, I think. Amy and Enid. It's kind of like a coming-of-age story, and she said she loves it, so that's good enough for me. Emer Humphreys, incidentally, turned 100 3 weeks ago. April 15th. He was born in 1919. He's still kicking. Happy belated birthday to Emer Humphreys. I believe his last published book was in 2009, aged 90. He's The Woman at the Window, which sounds like a novel to me. He called it his last gasp. Oh, collection of short stories. So there you go. This one I think I just stumbled upon, slumming around at the Amazon Japan website. Pyrrhine Press, I haven't read anything by them that I loved. I had one bail and one so-so. So I'm not sure I get along with what they think is worth being published. But they're attractive little hardcovers, meant to be read in one sitting. I never read books that are supposedly meant to be read in one sitting, because I'm not that kind of reader. But this one I probably could. It's 100 pages. And it's called Beside the Sea by Véronique Olmy. She is a highly acclaimed French dramatist. And this is her first novel. Translated from the French by Adriana Hunter. I believe I've read Adriana Hunter's translations before. And it sounds kind of dark. It's a little bit of a thrillery thing, which I don't often care for, but this was brand new for like $4 or something on Amazon, so I bought it just on a whim. Mother takes her small children to the seaside, and she knows that it will be their last outing as a family. Like, what? I don't know, but I'll let you know later. Just a reminder that I do like to share the opening lines or the opening paragraph of books when I haul them, if they have a standalone kind of quality or vitality. The fact that a particular book's opening doesn't have that standalone vitality, I don't judge it, but some do, some don't. So that's why you're hearing some openings and not others. Now, what the hell was that fabulous Irish dude who was on BookTube? I first heard about him on Adam's channel. He shouted him out, and it seemed like I was the last person on BookTube who didn't know about him. And he was really sarcastic and wonderful, redhead, slim guy. Do you know who I mean? And he's about 10 days after I started following him, he quit BookTube after many years. So I don't know what that says about me. I can't remember his channel name, but he's on Twitter, and I follow him on Twitter, and he's got a very Gaelic-sounding Irish Twitter handle. If I find any of this, I'll put it in my show notes or something. But he, if I'm remembering correctly, he raved about this play, this gay play in book form, The Inheritance by Matthew Lopez, and I ordered it immediately. Look at that cover. How gay is that? And it's like novel length. I don't rarely read plays for pleasure rather than for school, but this one is inspired by Forster's novel Howard's End. Adam, are you listening? And it's set in New York 3 decades after the height of the AIDS epidemic. I read a lot of novels that were kind of like that, and I don't feel a need to read any more, but I'm curious about this one, so there's a queer readathon next month. I may get to it then, probably not, but I'll get to it soon, and I'll let you know how it is. The opening lines are from a character called Young Man 1, and he says, "He has a story to tell. It is banging around inside him, aching to come out. But how does he begin? He opens his favorite novel, hoping to find inspiration in its first familiar sentence. And in reading those words, he finds himself once again in the gentle, reassuring presence of their author." And then an older man enters, comes on stage, and it's E.M. Forrester. Right. Everybody and their dog has been raving about this novel. When I first heard the premise, I thought, no, it's not like his last one, which I loved, so I don't think I want to read it, but everybody's loving it. So I bought A Ladder to the Sky by John Boyne. I can't remember who was the person who pushed me over the edge. Natalie of My Reading Days, I think. But I may have that wrong, because it's so everybody's loved it. The BookTube, the first round of the BookTube prize, judges loved it. So I'm going to hang on to it. I will be a judge for the semi-finals starting next month. So I'll have it in hand if I get to judge it. And if I don't, I will read it on my own. It's about a doofus of a wannabe writer who insinuates himself into the lives of actual writers and then steals their stories or somehow swindles them. He's a real shifty, untrustworthy guy and apparently quite endearing. So, 36 booktubers can't be wrong, hey? Now, curiously, this does not have a compelling opening sentence like The Heart's Invisible Furies did, one of my all-time favorite openings of my whole reading life, but this one is just nothing special, but apparently the novel is. And it's a gorgeous hardcover, no dust jacket. You can feel the print. Yeah, it's pretty. And this is a Blame It on Leo purchase. Many people had loved it, but I wasn't convinced, and Leo talked about it on his camera flip video of his shelf tour the other day, and I ordered it and got it the next day, and that is Ohio by Stephen Markley. Lovely, huge hardcover. It's an American novel published last year, set in, you guessed it, Ohio, and I don't need to know anything else. But I think we should listen to the opening paragraph, even though it's quite long. The coffin had no body in it. Instead, the Star Legacy 18-gauge platinum rose casket, on loan from the local Walmart, had only a large American flag draped across its length. It rode down High Street on a flatbed trailer, tugged along by a Dodge Ram 2500, the color of an overripe cherry. A blast of early winter cold had invaded October, and a hard, erratic current of air tore across New Canaan with the unpredictability of a child's tantrum. 1 second the breeze was calm, tolerable, and the next a frigid banshee shriek would rip across High Street, chilling the assembled scattering leaves and loose litter, drowning out petty chatter, and carrying voices off to the sky. Before the truck and its cargo left the fire station, the staging ground for all New Canaan's parades from Thanksgiving to the 4th of July, no one had bothered to secure the flag, and as the show casket reached downtown, a gust of wind finally took it. The stars and stripes flapped, undulated, parachuted through this mad breeze as several sorrowful gasps issued from the crowd. Nothing could be done. Each time it began to drift back to earth, another gust would catch it, toss it, bear it aloft. The flag made its way to the square, where it finally snagged on the gnarled branches of an oak tree, and shuddered there. Gah! That is a lovely opening to a novel. I didn't practice that. I hadn't read it at all until I just read it to you. That just takes my breath away. Well, I'm going to be getting to this one as soon as I can fit it in. Thanks, Leo. Put me over the edge. This is one that I think I first heard... what's the guy's name on the Book Riot podcast? I always forget his name. He's got a lovely voice, and I don't listen to that podcast regularly anymore, but I did for years. And his name has gone out of my head, but he talked about this novel as one that had been nominated for... It was a finalist for the Pulitzer, and then he said it just kind of dropped off the cultural radar, and he was sad about that because he said it was a really good book. And I've always remembered that. Don't remember his name, but I remember the novel. The author has a very memorable surname. And then I heard Lindsay of I'm sorry, I have so many Lindsays in my life, including 2 Lindsay booktube channels and my cousin Lindsay. So what is that Lindsay's channel name? Lindsay reads books? Oh dear. I'm going to have to put it in as a text because on my other iPad, my YouTube app is acting up, so I can't find it. But that Lindsay read it recently. It was on one of her vlogs, and it brought it back into my awareness, and I ordered it right away. Maud's Line by Margaret Verble. And I had not remembered that Margaret Verble is an Indigenous American writer. She's a member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, lives in Lexington, Kentucky, and this novel is set in eastern Oklahoma in 1928, and that is all I need to know. Look at that cover, Maud's Line. Published 2015. Oh, this one also has a gorgeous opening paragraph, which I've just scanned, and I'm about to read to you without having really read it myself. Maud was bent over the one row, suckering tomato plants, and Lovely was bent over the next one. They were talking about a girl Lovely had his eyes set on. But a cow's bawling interrupted that. Maud unfolded and looked toward the river. Lovely did the same. The bawling was loud, unnatural, and awful, and it set them to running. They ran first toward the house, not toward the sound, because neither had taken a gun to the garden. Maud stopped at the steps. Lovely rushed in for their rifles. Armed up and not bothering to talk, they both ran straight toward the pump to get to the pasture below the ridge where the howling was coming from. If they hadn't been fearful, they would have run 50 more yards to the gate and gone through it. But they were scared and hurrying, so they climbed the barbed wire just past the pump, and Lovely snagged his sleeve, leaving behind a piece of blue cotton waving like the flag of a small foreign country. Maud did worse than that. She snagged her leg below the knee at the back, opening a tear deep at its top and 3 inches long. Maud was vain about her legs, and Lovely had only 3 shirts, but still they ran, focused on the bawling, without minding their mishaps. Oh my God, that's fantastic! I'm speechless. I want to keep reading, so yeah, I'm going to be getting to this one as soon as I can. Next is a novel I had heard the author's name and hadn't really lodged very far into my brain until Britta cited one of her novels, The Hired Man, as one of her top 10 reads of all time, Aminata Forna, and this one is her latest one, Happiness, and this one is on doing the rounds of the BookTube Prize. I'm hoping I get it to judge. I'll be ready if I do. If I don't, next month I will read it on my own. Isn't that a nice cover? I love it. There's another fox cover. People are loving this. I think Natalie loved it. Aminata Forna is a Scottish and Sierra Leonean writer, born in Scotland. Her father was Sierra Leonean and her mother was Scottish. Yeah, she's such an interesting person, and I have never read anything by her. I'm definitely going to read The Hired Man, which Britta loves, but I want to get to this one too. Now, the only thing I'm disappointed about with this is so much of it, looks like fully a third, or maybe a little bit less, is in italicized print, which I hate. Look at, there's the opening. And there's pages of it scattered throughout the text. I can't stand reading italicized prose, but if it's good, I will persevere, but don't do that. This one, I'm not going to read the opening, but if you want to hear a fabulous riff on the opening, check out Natalie's vlog about this book. I only watched the first few minutes because I want to read the book, but I'm going to put a link in the show notes, and she talks about her reaction to the opening page or two, and that heightened my interest. This one is, yeah, there's a fox. I remember Natalie was so intrigued by the urban foxes, and that is part of the story. Set in London, an American, I don't know if it's Jean or Jean, so I don't know if it's male or female, an American studying the habits of urban foxes, and a psychiatrist, Attila, from Ghana. That's all I need to know. I'm looking forward to finding out about Happiness. And this was on the Women's Prize long list. I don't think it made it to the short list, so that means it's probably a good book. Remembered by Yvonne Battle Felton, African-American historical novel about slavery, or set in the slavery era. Parts of it are in 1910, but then it flashes back, I think, to earlier times. I've heard mixed reviews, but I'm here for African American historical fiction. Opening paragraph in a bit. She's sitting there on top of the chifforobe, rocking back and forth, swinging her legs in time to some music she heard 10, 20 years ago. She's like that, temp. Gets something stuck in her head, and it stays there like a thumbprint in wet cement. I want to ask her what she's listening to, but I haven't let on I know she's there. I can feel her watching me, smoldering, hating me for ignoring her. It serves her right. It's been nearly a year since the last time she came. She can just sit there brewing and rocking and waiting on me like I've been waiting on her since then. "Mama's dead," she had said. Well, that piques my interest. And the last all came today. It was a big mail day. I felt like Steve Donahue. This is Haji Murat by Leo Tolstoy. I was supposed to be buddy reading this last month with Lukács of Totally Pretentious, and when I realized I didn't have what will probably be the ultimate translation by Richard Prevere and Larisa Volokhonsky, I punted on doing the buddy read then in favor of getting this translation, which I now have, and Lukács and I will buddy read it soon. This was his last work of fiction before he died. That's why it's his last work of fiction. A story about the struggle between the Muslim Chechens and their inept occupiers, and is definitely an intertext between my second most favorite novel of all time, A Constellation of Vital Phenomenon by Anthony Marra, and he uses a paragraph from this as his epigraph, which is how I first became aware of this novella and interested in reading it. And this is a 2-volume trilogy from Hungary by Nicholas Bamfy, the Transylvanian Trilogy. That's volume 1, which is the first novel. They were counted. I love that cover. This edition from Everyman's Library. And then volume 2 has the other two in the trilogy. They Were Found Wanting is the title of the second one, and the third one, They Were Divided. This will be a buddy read with Ange of Beyond the Pages. She is reading her complete physical TBR this year, or at least I think she is. That was her goal. And I knew about this series, and I volunteered to buddy read. She has the first 2 novels in the trilogy. They Were Counted and They Were Found Wanting. So we will be buddy reading them this year, and maybe if we liked them and don't bail on them, we'll do the third one, They Were Divided, maybe next year. This is Bamfy's elegy on Empire, which rivals Joseph Roth's The Epic Sweekened Drama of Tolstoy, and a tinge of Proustian nostalgia. As long as it's only a tinge, I'll be okay. And they were published in the 20th century. The second one was published in 1937 in Hungarian, so they're probably all in the 1930s is my guess, without doing any further research. Translated by Patrick Thursfield and Catalin Bamfy-Jelen. I'm guessing that the second of those translators is a relative of the author. They are smart-looking hardcovers. And this is the gayest book published in 2019, I think. Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl by Andrea Lawler. Blame It on Eric Carl Anderson. I had never heard of it until he hauled it, and I had to buy it, and it sounds incredible. It's also, funky pink cover, but also one of those hardcovers that it's really close bound, so I will never break the spine, so I will be reading this book like this the whole time to keep that tight binding. And some rather kinky end papers. And it's written by a woman. I don't know her sexuality, and maybe it's not important, but it's a gay male-centered novel written by a woman who is from Western Massachusetts. Can I pronounce that correctly? Obviously not. I'm Canadian. Set in 1993. I think it's set in a gay bar, the only gay bar in a small university town. And it's been described as a cult debut novel. I think it has to be published a little bit longer than a few months before it can be called a cult novel, but I'm still optimistic. Opening paragraph, short and sweet, gets your attention. Like a shark, Paul had to keep moving. He slept only when necessary. He had business with the world, codes to crack, so many questions. Tonight, for example, Paul needed to know what fucking was like for girls. And the last of my book hauls, this is a very Blame It on BookTube book haul, isn't it? Is a Blame It on Charlotte of Tired Mama Tries to Read book that she was so excited about a few weeks ago on her channel. I ordered it the same day, I think. A memoir, which I never read memoir. Roseanne Alexander's Waterfalls of Stars, My 10 Years on the Island of Skomer. She raved about this so much that I'm going to look up that video and link it, because her enthusiasm was infectious. I'm interested in islands, and I like nature writing and haven't read much, and this is a chunkster. The author, her boyfriend was offered the job of warden on an uninhabited island, Skomer Island, and they lived there for 10 years, and it's just all her nature observations and whatnot, and that really sounds intriguing. And look, there are no margins. It's tiny type, 350 pages, tiny type, and no margins. Look at how those very small margins. It's going to be a big read, and I can't wait. It's off the coast of Wales, because it says here, Skomer is managed by the Wildlife Trust of South and West Wales. Opening paragraph. Even now, the slightest thing can take me back. The way the sunlight catches in the turn of a wave, or a distant bird call, half heard, snagged in the breeze. Then, in that moment between eye blinks, I am there, on a cliff top at the edge of the Atlantic. Yeah, that sounds really good. So, that's a fabulous book haul. I'm excited all over again. I kind of forgot what I had, especially the earlier stuff. I want to stay up all night reading. I wonder which one I'll pick first. No, I've got 17 books in the go right now, so I will get to these hopefully soon. That's it. Thanks for watching.